Welcome back into the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, presented as always by Full Press Coverage. We are officially in the preseason of the NBA. I know I have been glued to my TV watching all that great preseason action. It sounds like a joke, but I actually have been. And with that comes our responsibility as a basketball podcast to give you a preview and some predictions for this upcoming 2021-2022 NBA season. So we're going to be doing a preview of all 30 teams. Nobody will be left behind, though I'd be lying if I'm going to say each team we're going to do an hour on. We'll try to keep it brief and give you all the things you need to know about those teams. So today we're going to start with what we think are the three worst teams in the Western Conference. Our next show will be the three worst teams in the Eastern Conference, and we'll go from there, continuing until what we think are the three best teams from each conference. And before we get to that, though, Sap, we have a little bit of NBA news that's going on concerning the two guys who have made the most headlines this offseason, all for the wrong reasons. Ben Simmons and Kyrie Irving. Ben Simmons has now been losing money because he's not showing up to Philadelphia. So when we last spoke about this, we were waiting to see if the Sixers were going to actually withhold game checks. They are. And with Kyrie Irving, he's still refusing to get vaccinated, which and it doesn't look like he's going to get vaccinated anytime soon, which not only is going to result in him losing game checks and not playing in half the games or maybe the whole season for the Brooklyn Nets, but and if this came out today, Sap, in Canada, should he try to make that trip and not stay to the strict Canadian quarantines, he could face jail time. So it's a whole mess with Kyrie Irving and Ben Simmons still. Sap, what are your thoughts on the latest?
Which I'm sure Kyrie Irving would like to spend some time in jail, because then he would become a martyr and compare himself to Nelson Mandela. He'd be the Nelson Mandela of the NBA, because that's exactly what I think of when I think of Kyrie Irving. Look, a month ago I wrote a column. They should just be traded for each other. I think it would be perfect for both organizations. Now, we've heard that if Kyrie Irving gets traded, he'll retire. Then if you try to pursue a trade for Kyrie Irving and you're the Brooklyn Nets, now you have to deal with Kevin Durant. Is Durant going to be pissed off about that because he's really good friends with Kyrie? And we've talked about that Kyrie, for as much as we think he's a troll, an idiot, whatever you want to use to describe him, within the league, he's very popular. And even with his teammates, James Harden and Kevin Durant, the two most important teammates that he has. So I would love to see the trade, because then Kyrie could go remain unvaccinated and play in Philadelphia half the time, because that's where the 76ers are. And then, Ben Simmons could go to Brooklyn. I think both teams would benefit from it. But as far as Simmons, it was kind of funny because his representatives were like surprised that the 76ers weren't paying him. And it's like,
right.
Well, you didn't to camp. Like, there's no job in the world that you can't show up for and expect to get paid. Like, it just doesn't make sense unless you're Stephon Gilmore, who, after 4 weeks, the Patriots decided to trade for a 6th round pick, which is just horrible roster management, or in that case, mismanagement by Bill Belichick. But we're a basketball podcast. We'll stick with Ben Simmons and Kyrie Irving. Yeah, I mean, I would like to see this trade happen. I think both teams would benefit from it, but it probably couldn't happen because of Kyrie Irving. Look, Kyrie Irving is in a situation now where he won't be able to play the home games. He won't be able to play in San Francisco when the Nets play the Warriors. Obviously, Toronto is going to be a major issue. And I would think by a month from now, and the Knicks, exactly. And I think in a month from now, there's going to be other cities that are doing the same thing, maybe LA, Boston, wherever. The progressive cities are probably going to put those restrictions in place. So this could mean he misses, 55 of 82 games, which, who knows with Kyrie Irving. So those are the two big stories right now, is kind of the quiet period of time as we are 2 weeks away from the start of the season. So Simmons, through his representation, being surprised that he's being fined is either stupid or just, trolling. And Kyrie Irving, well, we'll see what happens with him. I mean, what could the Nets do with Kyrie Irving? I mean, would you want him to play just the road games? Isn't that a distraction as well? Because every time after a game, Durant and Harden and Steve Nash are going to be asked, well, you think the results would have been different if Kyrie was on the road with you guys? You lost a tough game to the Bucks. If Kyrie was here, would it have been different? I mean, at some point, those guys are going to get annoyed. And we know that, not much annoys Kevin Durant, right? I mean, nothing bothers him.
Yeah,
so
nothing
I'm sure
bothers him.
he'll handle that narrative beautifully. And as long as the strip clubs are open, James Harden will be happy. So, yeah, I've heard out there that one solution could be where you should for the year. Say, Kyrie, you're not playing this year. We'll pay you for the road games because that's our choice, not your choice. But we're not going to pay you for the home games that you're missing because you're not vaccinated. So out of the $35 million that he's scheduled to make, we'll pay you for the games that you were eligible to play, but we don't want you. And so here's, $16 million. We'll give you that, and you're off the roster because he's going to be a major distraction. Great player, we know that. And how many times have we talked about this, Jet? As great as Kyrie Irving is to watch play, I mean, I think he's a magnificent player. You despise him. He doesn't necessarily lead to victories, right? I mean, he's just kind of like Odell Beckham Jr. That's who I've compared him to. Like the Browns' offense is better with Odell Beckham Jr. than it is with him. And I don't think the Nets are appreciably better with Kyrie Irving. They are better with Kyrie Irving, but not the same as when Durant and Harden are, playing or not playing. So that could be a solution too, where the Nets call his bluff and say, yeah, sit out the year. We'll pay you for the games that you were eligible to play with this vaccine. The ones you weren't eligible to play, we're not going to pay you. Maybe that's a solution.
Yeah. I don't know that you're okay with having him, play in just the road games because also he can't practice. So, you're throwing in a guy who's not going to be able to practice. And listen, I don't know how important practice is to NBA players realistically, but in terms of conditioning, I know it's important that way. And I have my doubts about what kind of shape he's in because he hasn't been able to practice at all. And yeah, I mean, listen, I don't believe Kyrie Irving with 99.9% of the things that comes out of his mouth because, I think it's just all bullshit. But I do believe that he would retire if he was traded. That I buy.
I do. Yeah, so, I agree with that.
Yes. So, I mean, they can't, they're up the creek, with him, and the proverbial creek with Kyrie Irving. And I was talking to my dad about this.
We call that Schitt's Creek. They're up Schitt's Creek right now.
Yes, Irving, exactly. Right?
Like, what's the solution other than he gets vaccinated? And if they force this on him, which I don't think they would, because it's the NBA. No. There's football players that aren't vaccinated, especially superstars kind of do what they want to do. Like they're going to have to throw the needle on this and try to figure out what's going to work out best for their organization. Because he is an asset. We know that he's a fantastic basketball player. And also he's tied to Kevin Durant, right? So if you quote unquote mistreat Kyrie Irving, you're going to piss off Kevin Durant as well. And good luck to your title.
That's the biggest problem.
Yeah. I mean, he's Kevin Durant's wingman or sidecar or whatever.
Right. But, so Sap, like what I was saying with, talking to my dad, who's a big basketball fan as well. And, the reason he said he's never been that worried about the Nets because he thought that he was sure it was just going to implode at some point.
Sure. Yep.
And this is it imploding. I mean, at some point, when does Durant and Harden get pissed off at him? Like, why are they not mad at him right now? They've gotten vaccinated.
Spell over them. He holds a spell over them, Jet. I think that's the easy answer, right? We've talked about
all
this.
Spells can be broken, right? What breaks the spell?
I guess. I mean, there's the evil eye. The Sicilians have the evil eye, and you put this dish with water and oil over, and you say 19 prayers, and you're supposed to get rid of the evil eye. He has a spell over Durant, Harden, like a lot of the league. He's a vice president in the Players Association.
I know. It's crazy.
That almost, this may be hyperbolic. It sounds like having Charles Manson, who, is now dead, thankfully, but having Charles Manson on the parole board. Like you got Kyrie Irving as a vice president of the Players Association. And like, it's like, what? Like that makes absolutely no sense. The guy is unstable. He was trying to blow up the bubble a year and a half ago because I think he didn't want to see LeBron James win another championship. I think he's that deceitful, petty, whatever you want to use to describe him. It all fits with Kyrie. Yeah, I mean, they're going to have to handle this delicately. And I do agree with you, Jed. If he gets traded, he ain't going to show up. He's just not. Yeah, he's got enough money, right? I mean, he's got other interests, and he have a huge Nike contract, and he's made a movie, and so I'm sure he's fine financially. He's plus, trying to, I don't know.
nothing would make him happier than to, like you said at the beginning, kind of be that martyr, traded
Oh,
and then retire
absolutely.
because he was traded because of his
Hmm.
vaccine status or lack
Right.
thereof. And I think he would say, "Oh yeah, look what I did. I stood up for my." I think that's why he hasn't gotten vaccinated to this point because, I think he likes money and stuff like that, but I think he likes his opinion of himself more
Absolutely.
than anything
Yep.
else, and so
Oh no,
that's what
he
he
would be.
values the most.
He loves being the martyr. I mean, he's gonna at some point in his crazy mind is going to say, I'm like Kurt Flood. I gave up my career for the rights of
Right.
others. And to me, Kurt Flood belongs in the Baseball Hall of Fame because no one made a bigger sacrifice other than Jackie Robinson than Kurt Flood did,
I agree.
back in the 60s. So those two guys, they made real sacrifices, not Kyrie Irving. I mean, just get vaccinated. It seems like the thing to do, doesn't it? I mean, we're all kind of, I hate to use this term, we're in this together because, again, this is not him not getting a blood transfusion for a knee operation. This is him getting vaccinated so he doesn't infect other people, teammates, staff, loved ones, whatever the case may be. It's a little bit more than that, but this is a selfish player and a selfish person. And look, he probably loves the fact that right now, up until the season starts, everyone's talking about Kyrie Irving and Ben Simmons. And the thing about Kyrie Irving is he at least, makes himself somewhat available to speak out on these things where Ben Simmons is, Harpo Marx.
Oh, he gets off on it. Kyrie Irving
Oh, of course he
loves
does. He's
this.
a troll.
Absolutely
He's a
loves it.
professional
Loves
troll.
it.
He'd be a great talk show host. I mean, he would just throw shit out there and light up the lines. He's Kirk Minahan in some sense, right? Let me just say some crazy shit and whatever, and go down alleys I shouldn't go. Like I'm gonna start talking bad things about female reporters. Like who gives a fuck? And that's Kirk Minahan was doing that all over the place. Like really, this is something that really pisses you off that there's a attractive lady on the sidelines. Like you have
Right.
to Aaron Andrews, and that's what Kirk Minahan would do. And that Kyrie Irving kind of fits into that narrative.
Well, the thing is, I think we said this the last time we talked about him too, Sep. He's definitely not as smart as he thinks he is, but he's
No.
he's smart enough to be very dangerous, and that's what he's
Yes.
become.
Great point. Great point.
And so we'll see. I could be proven wrong tomorrow, Sap, but I feel pretty confident knowing as much as I know about Kyrie, the person, that he's just not going to get vaccinated. He's not going to do
Right.
it. Because in his mind, he's winning right now.
Yep.
He'll lose paychecks. That's fine. He has money, and he'll become a martyr, and the players will rally around him more, or whoever the hell loves him will rally. I don't think he feels the need to do it at all because his priorities are different than most people's priorities.
What does Nike say? I mean, I know he has a huge contract with Air
I don't
Jordan.
know.
Seriously, I mean, will they step in and will they just say, you know what, he is a martyr, and we're going to support Kyrie Irving because he doesn't want to be vaccinated? And all of a sudden, don't forget, there's a large group of people in this country who don't want to get vaccinated. I mean, I kind of find it laughable that the far right, who despises NBA superstars, especially the black NBA superstars, all of a sudden is siding with Draymond Green and a little bit with LeBron James and with Kyrie Irving and with Andrew Wiggins, who, by the way, I guess has gotten vaccinated because, maybe Steph Curry and Klay Thompson got in his face or whatever the case may be. Who the hell knows? I mean, Steph Curry was backing up Kyrie Irving that the world could be flat. So I think sometimes we overrate the intelligence of these guys,
Right.
and maybe they're going into places they really don't know much about. But yeah, I mean, I wonder what Nike's part in this is because he makes a ton of money from Air Jordan. Are they going to say, Kyrie, you got to get vaccinated because your brand is going to get hurt? Or do they, on the other side, say, yeah, this is a great opportunity to turn him into, the voice of the anti-vaxxers? Who knows?
Yeah, that would be a disaster. Let's
It would
hope
be.
that
I don't
Nike
think
has a
I don't
little more
think Nike
sense than
does that.
that.
I mean, they back Colin Kaepernick for a good reason. I mean, backing Kyrie Irving on this doesn't make a lot of sense for your brand.
Right. I think, history will be kind to the Colin Kaepernick supporters and not to the anti-vaxxers.
Right.
That's just my opinion
Mhm.
and guess. All right. And the Ben Simmons thing, Sap, just, a quick note on it. Like you said, why they're surprised that the Sixers are withholding money from him is I've said this about Rich Paul before, his representation in the clutch. I don't think Rich Paul understands how the NBA necessarily works. I think he knows how people work.
Mhm.
And he's a hustler, and he grinded his way to this position where he is right now. He was selling jerseys out of the back of cars. Now he's the most powerful agent in the NBA. But I don't think he really similar to how Donald Trump didn't really understand what being a president was and like
Right.
what the sort of things you had to do. I don't think Rich Paul really understands, the salary cap or how the inner workings of teams are, and that's not necessarily his fault. He never was part of a team. He didn't grow up being a part of the NBA, lifestyle or anything like that, and wasn't formally educated via, some like agency school. But I mean, what were the Sixers supposed to do? Have shit thrown in their face and say thank you very much? I mean, obviously they
Yeah.
weren't gonna give him checks. Why should they?
Yeah, Ben, don't show up to training camp. Don't show up to any games and we'll pay you. Like, who doesn't want that? That's like, suspended with pay, which I love when you hear, police officers suspended with pay. It's like, that seems pretty good, actually, right? You get like paid vacation. Now there's
Right.
there's obviously a black mark. The officer suspended because he discharged his gun wrongfully or whatever. So yeah, I mean, but Ben Simmons doesn't look to be the kind of guy that's going to be turned off by that. Like, he's not a baller. Like, I don't think he'd be like, yeah, just deposit those checks in my account and I'll be in Southern California in this beautiful new home he bought and whichever Kardashian he's sleeping with at the moment, or if that's the case, yeah, I'm just gonna have a good old time. Yeah, it just sounded so tone deaf from Rich Paul saying, "Oh, or his representation that he wasn't aware that this was going to happen." Like, I don't know.
Yeah, like I said, I don't think he understands how these sort of things work, and I don't know who's going to blink first, but at least the Sixers aren't just taking it, which is I guess something if you're a
Yep.
Sixers fan. Personally as a Celtics fan, I mean, it's wonderful to watch. It's just completely disintegrating there, but if I'm a Sixers fan, I'm glad that at least they're somewhat standing up to him. I mean, I don't know how it's going to finally play out, but however it does, it's clearly just getting uglier and uglier. But we'll keep checking in on both those guys as as there's more news on them, Kyrie Irving and Ben Simmons. But let's get to our preview of the 2021-2022 season, Sap. We'll start in the Western Conference today. And we'll do 3 teams, talk just briefly about each of them, where we feel like they're going to be this year, what the future holds for them. And Sap, I thought maybe this would be a little fun. What do you think? Best case scenario, what's the most likely player on that team to win an award or some sort of status, first team All NBA? That's something like that. If you're okay with that.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, it might be tough to get first team All NBA players out of the Timberwolves, Thunder, and Rockets, but we could get.
Well, it doesn't have to be first team All NBA.
Yeah. No, or anything. Some or
Yeah.
first team All defensive team. Yeah. So there's some players on these teams. I mean, look, the beautiful part about the NBA is even these 3 teams, they have players you want to go watch, right? You want to see these players because they're highly touted rookies or players that maybe the Celtics or the Lakers or whoever's interested in acquiring. So yeah, there's a lot out there to talk about. That's what makes the NBA so fascinating. Look, every sport is. I mean, even the New York Jets have some players you want to talk about. You get the Zach Wilson at quarterback and his hot mother, so you can talk about that. But yeah, that's what makes the NBA fascinating. Even like the worst teams have someone that's interesting.
All right, well, let's start then, Sap, with the team that has the lowest win total projection from Vegas. The Oklahoma City Thunder are projected to win 23 and a half games. Take the over or under at your own caution with that team. They are in obviously complete rebuilding mode. They have 1 billion draft picks. That's not an over exaggeration. I think that was the last count is 1 billion.
1 billion
picks.
draft pick.
Yep. And they do have one budding starish player in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And then there's a lot of guys on the roster who people are just kind of, okay, hopefully they develop into something. And that's the way they're going. They're years away, obviously, from being competitive. There is clearly a plan in place there, but they have the lowest win total projection for a reason, Sap. Is there any reason to like what this team might put forward this year on the court?
Not this year, but they do have 17 first round picks over the next 7 years. And Sam Presti has a good reputation of drafting players. Now, again, the great players he drafted were at the very high end of the lottery, right? Obviously, you had Kevin Durant as the second overall pick. I believe Harden was fourth and Westbrook was fifth. But, that's incredible by Sam Presti. Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. Could we make a case that this is kind of a backhanded compliment, or maybe it's an insult of Shea Gilgeous-Alexander? I'm just going to call him SGA because his name I continually screw up. But SGA, if you took the best player on all 30 teams in the NBA in terms of like highest ceiling, is he the worst of them? Like, I know there's. I know, like,
I don't think so. You think so?
Well, I mean, we're going to talk about the Houston Rockets and the Minnesota Timberwolves in this podcast, and like, I think Jalen Green has a higher ceiling than SGA, right? I mean,
yeah,
can we
I agree
on that? And I think that Karl Anthony Towns is better than SGA. I don't know, maybe something we monitor all year. Is SGA the worst, best player in the league? It sounds like a Yogi Berra statement, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I understand what you're saying. I'm going to have to now, do a deep dive into all these teams and look and see if I agree with you or not. He's somebody that is, really, really hyped, especially in like the advanced stat community really likes him. He was a guy who was part of the trade for Paul George. And that was the mechanism to get him there. So he was sort of the centerpiece there. And, he's put up numbers, but he's put up numbers on a crap team. So I think, there's still a lot of wait and see with him. As far as the rest of their roster, I think they're in sort of like, let's just throw a bunch of rotations and see who pops mode right now, because it's all guys who are, first round picks, some international guys. And I don't think that they have, other than SGA, I don't think they have any guys who they're, feel like they need to carve out playing time for specifically. I think it's like as open of a roster competition really as it gets, because nobody has proven themselves to be an NBA level commodity outside of Shea Gilgeous-Alexander and maybe Dort, who seems like he's a capable defender. But that's real. If that's your second best player, there's a reason that they're not in, the conversation for a lot of wins. So, I like the plan in a small market of having a lot of draft picks and a lot of cap flexibility. So I think that Sam Presti's done well to do that, but it's going to require a lot of patience because they're nowhere close to being able to be competitive. And even just this past draft, Sap, they had a high pick. They took a kid from Australia who seems like he's nowhere near ready to be, a contributing player right now. And so we'll have to see what happens. But I think that besides SGA and I guess Dort, you could see any number of players starting and playing meaningful minutes for this team because there's that much uncertainty with the roster.
Yeah, I mean, they're building for 2023, 24, like 2 years down the road, right? When they get to hit on some of these draft picks, maybe they feel if they're close, they can take some of the draft picks and go get a legitimate player, but then the salaries wouldn't match up. So I think they'll probably be the worst team in the Western Conference. I would think that the amount of wins that being predicted for them is probably going to be accurate, like 23.5. So this is a team that will be in the draft lottery, obviously next year, and will have a chance to get a top 3 pick in the 2022 draft. So yeah, I don't have any really high expectations for the Thunder. SGA probably goes out and scores 25, 26, 27 points a game because he's the guy. And can he sneak in as third team All NBA? I doubt it, because you generally don't see guys even on third team All NBA that play on a team that went 23 and 59.
Right. By the way, Josh Giddy is the name of the kid they took from Australia. He actually had a good first preseason game. He had 18 points, which, I think surprised a lot of people because he just looked so green. But in terms of a guy that I think could, if there's anybody who's going to win any sort of awards for this team, it's definitely Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. And if the Thunder overachieve a little bit and say win, close to 30 games, I could see him winning most improved player potentially.
Could be right. Yeah. If he's up around 28, 29 points per game, and Josh Giddy, I mean, hopefully the Thunder are Giddy for Giddy.
Right. So we'll see, but that's my best guess if they had anybody who's gonna. I mean, this
You
one's the
didn't like
most
my
obvious of all
joke.
the teams.
I thought that was a
No,
pretty
no,
good
no.
joke.
I thought it was good. Giddy for
All right,
Giddy.
you,
That's
you
good.
didn't laugh. I mean, you just kind of
Well,
said,
it
yeah.
wasn't. It was. I laughed on the inside.
Okay, good. That's good.
It was
You're
yeah.
like a great method actor. You work from the inside out
Yeah, I'm
or the
like
outside
Kawhi
in.
Leonard. I don't show
You're the
any
Kawhi
emotion.
Leonard. That's right. No
Yeah.
emotion. Kawhi laughed probably 3 years ago when he was in training camp.
Yeah. All right. So that's what we think for the Oklahoma City Thunder. Probably a bright future if they hit on their draft picks. Right now, nothing really competitive. Let's go to the team with the next lowest win total, Sap, in the West. The Houston Rockets, who had the second pick this year. They completely gutted their team following the James Harden trade of early last season. They're projected for 25.5 wins from Las Vegas. They took Jalen Green with the second pick, who I know a lot of people, myself included, and I think yourself included too, Sap, are pretty high on as a scoring machine in the NBA. They got some nice play out of Christian Wood last year before he got hurt. He's returning on a pretty reasonable contract, so they're hoping that maybe he can step up for them. Kevin Porter Jr. did some really nice things after they acquired him from Cleveland last year, after he sort of forced his way out of there by being, not a great teammate and stuff like that, but he looked good. And like, there was a reason he was a first round pick. So another team that has a lot of picks in the future, but this is clearly, they're saying, okay, Jalen Green, this is going to be your team going forward. He's the sole reason to watch this team. Would you agree with that, Sap?
Oh, without question. I mean, this is a guy who every night on SportsCenter, every time the Rockets play, you're going to see some highlights of him. He's a tremendous scorer, exciting player to watch. Again, he could be in line, and I think he's probably the betting favorite to be Rookie of the Year. I'm talking about some sort of individual awards. I would assume he and Cade Cunningham are probably 1-2 when it comes to Rookie of the Year. And Cunningham's skills are a little bit more subtle than Jalen Green's. I mean, Jalen Green could immediately average 22, 23 points per game. I wouldn't be shocked at that because, again, he's the guy in Houston. Now, you don't want to get him too out of control and not learn to play the right way. You don't want to just roll the ball out and say, Jalen, go ahead and take every shot that you want and score 30 a game and we get blown out anyway. But I think he has a chance to be Rookie of the Year. Yeah, he's a high-end talent, and I think Houston starts their rebuilding process with him. And Christian Wood's a nice player as well. But again, they're in the Western Conference, and they're going to be right there with OKC bringing up the rear. I think they'll finish a little bit above them because I think Christian Wood being their second best player is better than what Oklahoma City has as their second best player. So I think maybe they can get a little past that win total. But Jalen Green is going to be must-watch TV this year. He looks like an extreme talent.
Yeah, and the reason I'm so high on him and optimistic about him having a chance to have a really good rookie season, especially in terms of scoring the ball, I think he could put up potentially historic numbers in terms of scoring because there's really no other significant mouths to feed there. And but the main reason I'm high on him, Sap, is because he did this. He was really productive in the G League last year against other grown men vying for NBA contracts. Versus college guys. So he has a general idea of what the speed of the NBA is going to be like. I know they're G Leaguers, but they're still professionals and they're older and their physiques are more filled out. And a lot of these guys were also the best players on their college teams, their international teams, whatever. And they're fighting to feed their families and to fulfill their dreams of getting into the NBA. So a lot more fierce competition in the G League than in, the Big 12 or what have you in college. So I think that was really impressive what he was able to do, in the G League bubble last year. So I think I agree with you. I think he's going to be highly entertaining. I think that they're going to allow him to do a lot of things because, again, there's not a lot of mouths to feed on that roster. And I think he's shown that he's got a good enough touch. He's athletic, he's fast, that he should be able to score a lot. So yeah, if anybody's going to win an award on that team, to me, it's Jalen Green winning Rookie of the Year. I agree with you. I can't see them winning that many games because their roster is very young, and outside of Green and Wood and then Kevin Porter Jr., you don't really know anybody that's going to substantially contribute. I will say this also, though, about they took another rookie whose name I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce. He's from Turkey. He's going to be good. The pick that the Celtics gave up to dump the Al Horford contract got rerouted to Houston via Oklahoma City. And the Turkish kid that they took with that pick, I think is going to be a good player. I don't think it's going to be necessarily this year, but he was putting up. Turkey has a very good league, and he was 19 and putting up double doubles in that league. That to me shows like his new teammate Jalen Green was doing against grown men. So I think that he's got promise too, not necessarily this year, but down the line. So I think that they had a good draft, and they have a ton of cap flexibility, obviously, and they have a guy that they're hoping in Jalen Green can be a centerpiece for a really competitive team. So this year, expect to see a lot of growing pains, but I think you expect to see some pops from the rookies, especially Green, and maybe Kevin Porter Jr. will live up to his he was a very high recruit and he was a first round pick. Maybe he'll take a leap too. But young players don't contribute to wins in the NBA, and Houston's chock full of them.
Yeah, and Jalen Green, I think, has a real chance to be Rookie of the Year, so that'll be interesting to monitor. But again, they'll be at the bottom of the West.
Yeah. All right, Sap. I'm getting a really weird buzzing in my ear. Are you getting that too, or just me? I don't know.
No buzz in my ear.
Possible I'm losing my mind. I'm going to my ear. But anyways, that was very weird. We're going to move on to Minnesota, Sap, and the team that has had a lot of promise for a couple of years with Karl Anthony Towns, but that promise hasn't really been fulfilled on. They're projected for 34.5 wins. How do you see Minnesota this year, Sap?
COVID. I know athletes or people have made excuses and said, well, COVID impacted them. COVID really impacted Karl Anthony Towns. Forget that he had COVID, which is bad enough. He lost his mom and his grandmother to COVID and 7 other members of the family. How he even played last year is beyond belief, right? Like to go out there and play. That's why the whole Kyrie Irving, Ben Simmons thing is even more of a turn off, because one guy doesn't want to get vaccinated. One guy is too sensitive to be criticized. And here's Karl Anthony Towns playing last year after losing his mom and grandma and 7 family members. Give him a lot of credit for that. He could be sitting on a monster year, right? Because we know how talented he is. We both love Anthony Edwards, love his personality as much as what he does on the court. This is going to be an interesting team to watch. And you brought it up that, if there was a Hard Knocks version for the NBA, that the Timberwolves would be a pretty interesting team because of Cat and also Anthony Edwards, and then having A-Rod as a part owner of the team. They're going to be fun to watch. I think they
the wild card D'Angelo Russell,
who's apt to do something crazy at any moment, right? So they're going to be interesting. They'll have some games where they go out and beat a really good team, and you're like, wow, this team's really talented. I mean, you could see Karl Anthony Towns go out and get 35 and 15, and Anthony Edwards go out and get 32, and D'Angelo Russell put up in the high 20s. The next thing you know, they're beating like good teams, right? And then the next night they may come back and get blown out by an average team. That's the ups and downs you're going to get with them. But I think they're going to be fun to watch, and I think that they'll surpass that win total.
Sap, Anthony Edwards, number 1 overall pick. Karl Anthony Towns, number 1 overall pick. D'Angelo Russell, number 2 overall pick. The talent is there.
And it hasn't been like they've been disappointments, right? You can look at that with some teams and say, well, they had the first pick, the second pick. D'Angelo Russell, they got in a trade. But these guys, I mean, Karl Anthony Towns, a multiple-time All-Star. Anthony Edwards, was he Rookie of the Year last year?
Or was it? No, LaMelo Ball was.
But he was right there.
He was very close.
Capable. And D'Angelo Russell's been an All-Star, right? Again, 24 guys for the All-Star team, but the league is loaded with talent. So these are guys that actually have performed pretty well. So if it works out, and we know Russell and Karl Anthony Towns, I guess, are good friends, that maybe that works out, and they're going to they'll be a pain in the ass type team on any given night. They'll go out there and they'll beat the Lakers at some point this year, but then they may turn around and lose to the Rockets. I mean, they'll be that type of team.
And shouldn't they all have complementary skill sets too? Towns can pick and pop or play in the post. Russell is the ball handler. Edwards is a slasher. I would think that should all
Should
work.
be. Yeah.
Edwards also reportedly has grown a couple inches in the offseason, which is, very fortunate for the Timberwolves. So he's already
Jason
an
Tatum,
athletic
who's
freak.
like 6'10" now. Yeah.
Yeah. So I like the talent of this team a lot. Obviously, culturally, they've been a mess, for a long time. Garnett has a terrible relationship with the team, even though he's the franchise's greatest player of all time. The general manager just got fired for doing some inappropriate things. Now they have a new GM. They have a new owner who, is a baseball guy, an A-Rod. So, culturally, and as far as they've ever gotten has been the conference finals one time. The Timberwolves aren't anything to write home about. But I do like that threesome as a pairing, mostly because, like I said, I think that their skill sets should all be complementary. It shouldn't be redundant there, and nobody should be getting in the way of the other players. We'll have to see what they do. Their coach now is Chris Finch, who they had a weird hiring. They hired a head coach in the middle of the season last year, which was very strange. Usually you do.
Yeah, from another organization.
Right.
Normally just bump up as a top assistant. They went out and got him from another team.
Yeah. So again, they don't have the greatest culture in the world. In fact, you could say they might have the worst culture in the NBA. But they do have top flight talent. And there's a reason why on the GM survey, which we're going to talk about on another podcast at some point in time, a couple of years ago, for a couple straight years, had Karl Anthony Towns as the top guy to build a team around. He is as gifted as you can get from a big man in the NBA. So if it's able to click and they're able to take some pressure off of him a little bit and have the other guys, Edwards and Russell, step up, the potential, I don't think they're going to reach this, is there for them to be a fringe playoff team. That's the talent indicates that they should be there. Now, that hasn't been delivered upon yet, so you can't really rely on it. But I agree with you, the over of 34.5 wins. And I'd say the best case they could hope for one player to win an award would be Karl Anthony Towns could be first team All-NBA. Could be. Not saying is going to be. That'd be the best case scenario for them.
Yeah, I mean, because, I would go third team All-NBA as a center, right? I mean, we kind of think of Embiid and Jokic.
I don't think Embiid's ever going to play enough games at this point.
That's true, too. You always have that question mark about him. And Jokic seems to be a constant, first or second team.
Yeah, that's going to be the hardest.
And they always throw Gobert in there because he's supposed to be an elite defender, although every time I watch him, I think he's overrated as a defender. Yeah, Karl Anthony Towns certainly could be second or third team All-NBA without question. He's got that type of talent. Yeah, this is going to be a good team to watch. The ownership with A-Rod is going to be interesting. Is he going to show up to the games? Is he going to be sitting courtside? Who's he dating? That's going to be interesting to see. But yeah, I mean, Anthony Edwards has a chance to be just a megastar, right? Because his game is so explosive and his personality is awesome, right? You just can't help but like him. He's a real personality, and that kind of contrasts a little bit with Cat, who's kind of a quiet guy. And then you got D'Angelo Russell, who's apt to do something crazy. So, yeah, and I think you're right, Jet. The three of them should complement each other because you've got the slasher, the athletic guy in Edwards. You got the big guy who's got an elite game. And then you've got D'Angelo Russell, who can handle the basketball. So, again, this is going to be a team that they'll beat the Lakers once. They'll give the Nets a close game and maybe beat them, and then they'll go ahead and lose to whoever. They'll be that type of game.
One of those two teams we talked about earlier, right? They'll lose to the Thunder.
They'll lose to Houston. Yeah, exactly. Because, Anthony Edwards is, he's still a baby. I mean, he's still a young kid. And Cat has gone through a lot the few years. There's going to be games where he's probably like, what the hell happened in my life? I lost my mom and my grandma and 7 other close members of the family to COVID. Like that's going to cause nightmares for that young man for years to come, like maybe for the rest of his life. So there's going to be games where he maybe not there. And then you got D'Angelo Russell, who's not the most reliable guy either. So yeah, they're going to be a fun team to watch, and on their best nights, they're going to be a problem.
Yeah, I'm excited to watch them. Definitely an interesting League Pass team. If you have League Pass to check out. So that's going to do it for us today, Sap, and our first set of previews for the 2021-2022 NBA season. When we come back with our next show, we're going to take a look at 3 teams from the Eastern Conference, what we think are the bottom 3 teams, give you a little preview about those. and we will continue on until the season begins, and then we'll back in full regular season mode on the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap. Make sure that you check out the podcast wherever podcasts are found. Find our social media at John Sap 25, at Jet Stryer. The YouTube is youtube.com/Jet Stryer. Again, we are the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap. We are presented by our friends at Full Press Coverage. Check out the website. We'll be back with another podcast talking about the Eastern Conference. See ya.